Hello and welcome. You're listening to Building Blank.
A collaborative world-building podcast.
We're your hosts, Greg
and Travis.
And today we're diving into the world of the apocalypse.
It is the year 2012. The world is crumbling into a new dark age. Disease and poverty run rampant in a world scourged by desolation, pollution, radiation, and despair.
But hey, don't let that spoil your day.
That was the beginning credits to a PS1 game called Rogue Trip Vacation 2012 that came out in 1998. And one of my favorite games at the time. So I thought, you know what, we're doing apocalypses. I'm going to throw it in there because I loved it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I've never played it, but that was fun.
Yeah, it was very similar to the popular Twisted Metal games, for reference for anybody out there. But when I came to do this episode, due to the grave nature of the content, I wanted to start on a lighter note with a joke.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking up some jokes to get the ball rolling a bit, and I couldn't believe it. People are making apocalypse jokes like there's no tomorrow.
I was wondering what you're doing with your phone up by the speaker. I was like,
I needed some cricket sounds. Yeah, and I'm going to apologize. My voice is just like destroyed from trying to do that voice in the beginning.
Yeah.
I was practicing there yesterday, and I guess I got a little overzealous, as Brad might say.
All right, so they're talking about apocalypses today. Oh, I can't even talk.
Yeah, and I was doing this, and I was kind of banging my head against the wall trying to figure out a way to do a good apocalypse episode, but also like incorporate some writing stuff. So I thought that I would focus on some flood myths.
Okay.
Because they're so common. Anyway, but then in terms of writing, I wanted to talk about something, there's probably a term for it out there, but I'm just going to call it like the 3 levels of story. And with that, what I mean by that is there's the story that the author knows, and they might not tell it to anyone. They probably have it written down, maybe not. But that's like, this is what happens no matter what.
Kind of in the author's head?
In the author's head, yeah. Like that's the chronology, the whole timeline, everything. And then there's what the reader knows. And that can be through character or narration or anything. And then there's what the character knows.
Yeah, because the characters usually don't know nearly as much as the audience.
Yeah, usually. It doesn't necessarily need to be in that order, but obviously the author always knows more than the reader or the character. And then I was thinking we could go into maybe some discussion, not even discussion, but just kind of like what's the difference between religion and myth.
Okay.
Because next week you're doing an episode on religion, right?
Yeah, we're going to do an episode on religion next week.
So I thought that'd be a good kind of segue. We're going from myth to religion next week. And then, just using those 3 levels of story as a tool to get inside your character's head. And like, not necessarily like, oh, what would this guy do? Like not trying to put yourself in their shoes necessarily, but imagining yourself or ourselves in a situation, but like in our world. Yeah, like I said, the universe or the world can end in many different ways, from the fire and brimstone of the Old Testament to the floods in Genesis, or there's also in the Greek and Mesopotamian myths. It can also go to final battles like Ragnarok.
Correct,
but I didn't want to do a Ragnarok episode because you're more the resident Viking expert, more so than I am. So I wanted to focus on a collection of 4 accounts of an ancient flood to kind of help us understand the 3 different levels that stories work on.
Okay.
Right. So as I'm talking about these, let's keep in mind kind of like what the author would know. Like I'm going to read these, but let's think of them like a fiction.
Okay.
Right. Not as an actual history, because there's myth and religion in here, and we're not focusing on that.
Yeah. And I just want to point out that you can make parallels if we're moving this whole concept from like reading a book to playing a game.
Mm-hmm.
There is like what the DM knows.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
There's what the players know and what the characters know.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Exact same thing. Because like players will know more than their characters know almost always.
Yeah, right. Obviously.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I was going to talk about this at the end, but that's something called dramatic irony. And I guess, it happens both in D&D and in writing. But so I'm going to start with here the myth of Atrahasis.
Okay.
And it was written down in the mid 17th century BCE, although, considered much older, passed down through oral transmission and all that stuff. And there are 3 tablets associated with Atrahasis that I'm going to get into. So basically on the first tablet, Enlil, the earth god, assigned these junior divines, kind of like lesser gods, like the Maiar
Okay.
versus the Valar in
Okay.
Lord of the Rings, to labor as farmers and maintain the rivers and canals. But however, after 40 years, the lesser divines rebelled and refused to do the labor anymore. And then it was Enki who came up with the idea of creating humans to do the work instead. And this really reminded me a lot of your Assassin's Creed
Okay.
kind of thing. Like they created the humans to be slaves.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Enki comes up with this idea of creating humans to do the work instead. So the mother goddess Mami was then given the task of creating humans. She made clay figurines mixed with the flesh and blood of the slain god Geshtu-E, which I just thought was really cool. So that's why I included
Okay.
that. And then all the gods spit on the clay, and after 10 months, a specially made womb breaks open, and humans are born. And that's kind of gross. So I thought I would include
gross. That was
that. Yeah. Hey, let's all spit on this clay. Anyway,
gross.
yeah. So then on tablet 2, it talks about human overpopulation.
Okay.
And so Enlil sends famines and droughts every 1,200 years to help control the human population. And then I guess it just ends with Enlil's decision to destroy humankind with a flood.
Okay.
And then Enlil gets Enki to keep his plan secret, so he doesn't warn anybody, right?
Okay.
And then in the 3rd tablet, this contains the flood myth, and Enki warns the hero Atrahasis of Enlil's plan to destroy humankind by flood, and he tells the hero to build a boat and escape.
Okay.
Right. So I mean, that's just like the Noah account, right?
That's basically word for word the same story.
Yeah. So he boards the boat with his family and his animals. They seal the doors, and then it storms and floods. And after 7 days, the flood ends, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Enlil ends up being upset with Enki for violating his oath, and Enki says, "I made sure life was preserved." And yeah, then they agree on other means for controlling the human population. So we have the humans being destroyed due to overpopulation. Atrahasis was not spared because of any virtue or holiness, but rather because he was favored by Enki.
Okay.
And then Atrahasis saves the animals, very much like Noah,
Yeah.
and it rained for 7 days. And then I'm just going to include the Epic of Gilgamesh in here because this one has basically the same character of Atrahasis,
Okay.
but his name is Utnapishtim, and he becomes immortal after the flood because of whatever, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, many scholars believe that the flood myth was added to the to tablet 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh by an editor who used the same flood story from the Epic of Atrahasis.
Okay.
And so that's just kind of here to illustrate how stories are kind of told and retold and changed by the people telling them, right? Like if it's a name or something. And so,
yeah,
like as from an author point of view, if this was like something you were writing, Atrahasis and Utnapishtim could be the same person. And then you just have these different cultures giving them different names or different writers, right?
Yeah, it goes to a point we made a couple episodes back where there's no original ideas. Like this proves it. Like it just
exactly
things get recycled.
Yeah. And then here's something cool. It's from the Sumerian king list. And this is dated around 2000 BC.
Okay.
And this is concerning basically that area, like Epic of Gilgamesh and Atrahasis and stuff.
Okay.
After kingship came down from heaven, the kingship was taken to Shuruppak. In Shuruppak, Ubaratutu became king. He ruled for 5 Sars and 1 Nur. In 5 cities, 8 kings. They ruled for 241,200 years. Then the flood swept over. So I just thought that was cool because I don't know what a Sar is or a Nur.
Me either. If anyone can tell us, let us know.
Yeah, and then we get into Genesis. So we had the Atrahasis, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and now Genesis, which was around 1400 BC, so a little later, right? Yeah, found in chapters 6 to 9 of the book of Genesis. Basically, God decides to return Earth to its pre-creation state and then remake it in a reversal of creation. And then I'm going to quote from Genesis 6, 8, Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord, which is very similar to Atrahasis, right?
Yeah.
Like how he found favor is probably by being whatever, virtuous or something, but it's just that favor is similar in all three. So just wanted to outline that.
Okay.
And then thus when God beheld the corruption of the earth, so this is why he's destroying or doing the flood, is because of the corruption of the earth. And so he gives Noah the divine warning of the impending disaster and made a covenant with him, promising to save him and his family. And then 40 days and 40 nights of rain, Noah saves his family and the animals.
Okay.
So a lot of similarities there.
Yeah. It's basically the same as Atrahasis' story.
Yeah. And then I was kind of having trouble tracking down the earliest source of the Greek flood myth.
Okay.
And I didn't get the earliest, but the most complete, or maybe most detailed or most famous, is from the Roman writer in his Metamorphoses.
Okay.
And that was finished around 8 AD. So basically, Lycaon, the king of Arcadia, had sacrificed a boy to Zeus, who was appalled by this savage offering. So he unleashed a deluge, right?
Yeah.
Flooded everything. And then Deucalion, who was the son of Prometheus.
Okay.
So favored, but for kind of obvious reasons. It's his son.
Yeah. I love the name Prometheus.
Yeah, it's so good.
Right.
Just means forethought is
just so cool.
Is what that name translates to. But yeah, like the biblical Noah and the Mesopotamian counterpart Utnapishtim, he uses this device he builds a chest instead of a boat.
Okay.
But yeah, uses that to survive the deluge with his wife. And I feel like this is kind of like a blending of the two, because Deucalion is favored by Prometheus, much like Atrahasis and was favored by Enki and Noah by God.
Yeah.
And then, but humanity was destroyed because of their wickedness in this one, right? Kind of like the Noah one. And I really like the Atrahasis one because it's just overpopulation. Like there's nothing evil about it.
Well, it just goes to show, because I think how values change over time.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like at one point it's like, oh no, we don't really, it's overpopulation, we can't feed ourselves. But then it turns into, well, we can feed ourselves, but people are fucking shitty.
Yeah.
And
then in this one, it rains for 9 days, and Deucalion rescues no animals, and this flood marked the end of the Bronze Age. Remember when we talked about the 5 ages?
Yeah.
Yeah, so all three heroes, Atrahasis, Noah, and Deucalion, find favor with a god. They all construct boats, being forewarned by the god who favors them. Atrahasis and Utnapishtim and Noah save animals and their families. Deucalion and Pyrrha are alone, and then they all restart humanity.
Okay.
And then the reason I included this flood myth was because there's actually not there's no destruction myth foretold in the Greek mythology from what I was looking at.
Okay.
But if we look at how the Romans basically supplanted the Greek religion, right? They kind of took it, made it their own, and then that became that.
Yeah.
But then Christianity likewise supplanted the Roman religion, right?
Yeah.
And so if we think of Christianity as being like the descendant almost of the legacy of the Greek and the Mesopotamian before it myths, then that would kind of make Revelations like the destruction myth of the Greek in a sense.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, again, I'm not saying that this is what is actually happening in history, but rather like if we were thinking this as a fiction, if we were the author and we put these 4 different accounts into our world, you could start with the idea like, oh yeah, it's going to end with Revelations, but I'm not going to talk about that until we get to Christianity.
Okay.
Here's another quote. For some time during the Middle Ages, many European Christian scholars continued to accept the Greek mythical history at face value, thus asserting that Deucalion's flood was a regional flood that occurred a few centuries later than the global one survived by Noah's family. So yeah, because they took everything like literally back then, right?
Yeah.
And then kind of getting into, I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah,
what I
I'm
was talking
following
about?
along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, just looking at the similarities between these myths and religion, I actually ended up getting down this rabbit hole about the
As you
similarities,
do. Yeah.
the similarities between Hercules and Jesus.
Okay.
And I was like, what? I got to read that. And so I'm just going to hit some of the major points about it. But the mortal and chaste Alcmena, the mother of Hercules, gave birth to him from a union with God, Zeus. So
Yeah,
kind of
obviously.
similar, Virgin Mary, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Herod wanted to kill Jesus, and Hera wanted to kill Hercules.
Okay.
They both traveled the earth as a mortal, helping mankind and performing great deeds, though, much different.
Yeah.
They both died and then rose up to become gods in what is called apotheosis. And then I just added Hercules had his 12 labors.
Yeah.
Jesus had his 12 disciples. And again, I'm not saying that Hercules is Jesus or anything, but if I was writing this as a fiction, it'd be kind of funny to have these two different accounts were really quite different.
They're very different, but
then having these similar themes.
yeah.
And then maybe neither is true, but they both kind of add up to a truth.
Yeah. Well, like, again, it just goes back to the same stories get told over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Right. Just new, fresh faces.
So I wanted to do just a quick definition of the difference between religion and myth.
Okay.
So the term religion defines a system of formally organized beliefs and practices typically centered around the worship of supernatural forces or beings, whereas mythology is a collection of myths or stories belonging to a particular religious or cultural tradition used to explain a practice, belief, or natural phenomenon. So I got that from Gale.com. But anyway, I think a better definition is a religion becomes a myth when it is supplanted.
Okay.
Right? Because like the Greek religion, that was the religion.
Yeah.
And then when the Romans took it over, it kind of was like, oh, that's Greek myth. And then we have Roman religion.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the Christianity supplanted the Romans, it's like, oh yeah, Greek and Roman myth. That's not real. Those are just stories.
Yeah.
Right. And now Christianity is supposed to be the religion,
the end all be all,
and truth. Right. I mean, depending on who you are.
Yeah.
And then, so again, if we go back to Christianity being the legacy of the Greek story in the beginning.
Okay.
Then yeah, the book of Revelations, which was written around 96 CE or just AD in Asia Minor. The author was probably a Christian from Ephesus known as John the Elder.
Okay.
And then according to the book, this John was on the island of Patmos, not far from the coast of Asia Minor, because the word of God and the testimony of Jesus, apparently. So yeah, that is kind of where I got to.
Okay.
And so I added another potentially Greek destruction myth.
Okay.
And this one is by the Stoics. And they basically thought that the entire universe would be destroyed in fire.
Okay.
But then it would be reborn exactly the way it had been originally. Like, exactly. Then they believed that there had been many previous universes and that there would be infinitely many future universes. And then
it's a cycle.
Yeah. And so like what we're doing now, talking on this podcast, we've already done it, uncounted times.
100 million times.
30, 100 million.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now if we keep all that stuff in mind, and I kind of blasted through that quick, but just keep those 4 different accounts and kind of how they have a beginning and then an end, and then there's all that confusion in between.
Okay.
But yeah, if we look at it from the author viewpoint, we will never know the truth of these myths and religions that we were just talking about. But like, what can be drawn from the similarities,
Yeah.
Like if you were that author, what would that do? In your mind, how would that work? You know what I mean?
What do you mean? Well, I'm what?
Like, what can be drawn from the similarities? Like, what, as the author, what would you maybe be trying to say there?
Okay, so I would maybe be saying, at some point, based on these myths,
yeah,
the destruction of the world or the flood or whatever is caused by by humans, whether it be overpopulation or wickedness,
Mhm.
right? It's their own fault,
Yeah.
and the gods are trying to fix something, right? Now, there's many other stories too.
Yeah. No, that's why I'm just focusing on this.
But
not-
on these
yeah.
ones specifically, yeah, it would be like that's the point. And maybe as a character or as a reader, you don't. I don't know. Might be just running my mouth here.
No. Yeah, it's good. I like something called the Word of God from
Okay.
TV tropes. So this is a trope, and they define it as a statement regarding some ambiguous or undefined aspect of a work. The Word of God comes from someone considered to be the ultimate authority, such as the creator, director, or producer. Such edicts can even go against events as were broadcast due to someone making a mistake. And so I like,
So, like when J.K. Rowling gives us unnecessary facts about characters
yeah, and
that have no bearing on the story whatsoever.
this kind of gets into something called the death of the author,
Okay.
where it's kind of like, because yeah, there's two camps where it's like Word of God. Yeah, J.K. Rowling said that, so that's true. But then there's this whole thing called death of the author, which I'm not going to really get into, but that talks about once the work is completed, it's done, and then however you interpret it ends up being the truth. And like the author shouldn't come in and force their will upon on your interpretation of the reading.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is also from TV tropes. In many cases, the authority does not feel the need to respond and to people asking like for clarifications. There are good reasons many creators don't respond to requests for clarifications. They want the fans to make their own interpretations.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of one of my favorite things too, is like you could have an overall arching thing, or you could just make these 4 different or however many different accounts.
Yeah.
And then, for the purpose of making it not just confusing, but like make it feel lived in.
Yeah.
Make it feel like a real world.
Because like if everyone knows exactly what happened, it doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I got a quote here from Patrick Rothfuss, a guy I talk about occasionally. All the truth in the world is held in stories. And then a counter quote from Bob Dylan. All the truth in the world adds up to one big lie. Yeah. So if we look at it from the viewpoint of the reader now, and again, not like us as the reader, but if we were the characters in these stories and we're thinking about these myths, hypothetically, the reader maybe like an alien, right? Just somebody that doesn't know anything about humans, other than these stories that the author would tell them. Like what would they conclude given the information presented to them, given the similarities between the myths and the religions and the cultures, and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So if I was an alien and I read this, I'd be like, yo, let's not go there. They fucking crazy. Their gods keep killing them off. They keep coming back over and over again. There's like 3 different accounts of that happening.
They spit on a bunch of clay. They made these humans to do their work for them, and then they just keep killing them.
They're just gross.
Yeah.
Let's not go there.
They just mix a bunch of blood in there. I don't know. That's crazy.
Gross.
Yes. So, and then, the last viewpoint. So this is the 3 levels again, right? Author, reader, character. And so this is what I mean about not putting yourself necessarily in your character's view, but like making yourself a character. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And now the thoughts that you have about these myths or religions, you could just kind of reverse engineer and do the same thing for your characters in your fictional world about any creation myths or religions that maybe you have.
Yeah, that's why I kind of like the idea of having multiple different religions and myths.
Yeah.
Because then like the NPCs don't know, right? It feels more lived in. Whereas like I find most like fantasy D&D, it's like the gods are real, tangible things.
Yeah.
And are proven. They don't really have to be like they. I think the way I feel about it is like different cultures can interpret these real beings differently because they're not present.
Like going back to your creation myth, you have, this is what I mean from like the author's standpoint, you have exactly what happens. You know how your world is created, everything that happened, and there's no contradiction to that. But then that's not what you have to put in your world,
world,
for
yeah.
the players or the readers to find out. You can have many. Well, you do have that one, right? You have Phil,
Yep.
and
Oh yeah.
and you have a bunch of different interpretations for the gods.
Yeah. So every race, like, there's only so many gods, but then every race has a different name for each one, right?
Yeah, and so that's kind of what I mean.
The humans
about that.
call the sun god Helioskith Phil.
Yeah, praise Phil or what?
Praise the Phil.
Yeah, that's what it is. And then so basically, going back to dramatic irony, this is just the definition because I said I would talk about it at the end here.
Okay.
A literary technique originally used in Greek tragedy by which the full significance of a character's words or actions are clear to the audience or reader, although unknown to the character. And so, like, a good example of this is like genre savvy people watching horror films. Like, don't go in there. What are you doing? Or like they show a shot of like a person like ready to stab somebody around a corner, and then they show the character creeping up to it. You know what's going to happen, but you just like, you're watching that train wreck happen.
Yeah, and you watch these characters make bad decisions based on information that you know, but they don't have that information. Right?
Yeah, and it's just cringeworthy, right? And that's why it's so tragic. You're like, oh, I can see what's going to happen, but I know it's going to happen, but I don't want it to.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, like Cobra Kai.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so much of it.
Yeah, but that's all I had for today for apocalypses.
Okay.
And so we're gonna go into our ad break, talk about some more submissions and stuff.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're actually keeping the submissions open that we asked for last week for another week. We're gonna talk about them next week on the religion episode. Yeah.
Then we're gonna go into world building some apocalypses. Maybe we'll just kind of see what comes up.
We'll do some brainstorming, and we'll make some tea and see you guys after the break. All right, and welcome to the break. So this is the part of the show where we stop talking about the scary apocalypse.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk a little bit about how much we love you.
Oh no, we're not doing one of these again, are we?
We're doing one of these. If you're listening to this, thank you. We really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day, and we love you. And we love when you guys give us submissions.
Yeah, we already got how many now?
We got 3 so far.
Yeah, these are for our gods and goddesses.
Yeah, so we will talk about that. We will go over the submissions. We're going to give it another week. And talk about that on the episode 21. By the way, this is episode 20. Congratulations, Greg. It's a pretty big milestone for us, I think.
Yeah, congratulations, Travis.
Thank you. And yeah, so if you guys want to, if anyone wants to send in a submission, you can do it on Facebook. We have a post up. We have a post up on Instagram. You can send us an email, or you can message us personally. However you want to send it, you can mail it to me if you want. I don't know how long that's going to take, but yeah, if they still do, what are those called? Telegrams? You can do that.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to talk about a website that our friend Ash used to do her submissions.
All right.
Well, not just talk about, but just mention it. Just called dolldivine.com.
Okay.
And so it's just you just like dress up and add things, kind of make these characters. And so she gave us some submissions and then made them on Doll Divine.
That's cool.
So if anybody's interested, that's there. I personally haven't used it yet, but checking it out looks pretty cool.
All right, awesome. So yeah, we have new fresh cups of tea, and I think we're ready to get back to the show. All right, welcome back.
Yeah, welcome to the world building.
All right, so we're going to talk apocalypses. So before we talk apocalypses, I think we need to go over a couple other things that we've already done.
Yeah, and that's kind of just like basic, or maybe I shouldn't say basic, but just like storytelling, right?
Yeah.
You can't just jump to the end.
I mean, sometimes you can.
Yeah.
Like, I know a lot of people start at the end and work backwards.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean, though, but they are connected.
They're connected. So in the beginning, we talked about last week, we talked about the 2 primordials, creating the world initially. Next week, we're going to talk about, the younger gods. But we have some ideas there too. We also want to talk about something we all talked about earlier in the villains, about the Barnacle King.
Yeah, the Barnacle
and the Crab
King.
Wars.
Yeah,
We've kind of taken that idea and ran with it.
yeah.
So we have a few notes, and we're basing all of our eras on, when the Crab Wars happened. And for the apocalypse, I was thinking the Barnacle King, at whatever point, whatever Crab War, could be Crab War 15, Electric Boogaloo. The Barnacle King finally attains that godhood.
Yeah, that we were talking about before.
And becoming a god on this side of the, the line, on Earth, on
Let's do it.
world.
Let's just do a quick recap.
Okay.
What we were going to talk about. Basically, you had the idea of the mortal plane and like the gods leaving it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm thinking, where was that? So at the end of the Dawn era, the gods go, okay, well, we're on this mortal plane. We should probably not be, because we're super powerful. Every time we take a step, we're killing our things we made, right?
Mhm.
So they leave, and one of them, some god of the deep, wants to stay. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But anyway, they find a way to reincarnate themselves into the Barnacle King. So the Barnacle King's immortal, right?
Mhm.
Who then tries to attain godhood in the first era.
Yeah.
Is stopped by these heroes, and ritual's partially done. And they end up, all of these heroes and the Barnacle King end up in a reincarnation cycle.
Yeah. And then the reason I focused on floods for the first half was because that has something to do with our creation and destruction myth as well, right?
Yeah.
The Barnacle King, as we're calling him for now, is god of the deep, right?
Yeah.
And so it would make sense in his best interest to like flood the earth.
Exactly. So
right?
The idea is for the mortal who's become the Barnacle King, or merged with the Barnacle King, or however it works, to try to become a god again and raise the sea to flood the world and turn all of the mortals into its, crab minions.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of the clay mixing that mother in the Atrahasis.
Yeah,
mixing the clay with the blood, because I think we were going to kind of do something like that, but maybe with some different things. But yeah, so I also kind of thought maybe the way to flood the earth would be something to do with, like ice.
Like melting the poles?
Melting the poles, yeah. But then further along that line, that the poles were created in the first place to lower the sea, maybe.
Okay.
And then that could have also been a way to like seal the Barnacle King or something. Because I think it was, I can't remember. I think it was like even Michelangelo didn't prove that the floods didn't actually happen at the scale that they did, because he thought that the water couldn't have evaporated fast enough, right?
Yeah.
But water didn't necessarily have to evaporate. It could have froze.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I was thinking along those lines. And then also like, I mean, that's one of the issues with our world, right? And not that I want to talk about issues necessarily on this podcast, but for me, that's what fiction is too, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a way to talk about issues or things that are important to you in a different lens so that you can explore it freely.
Yeah.
Right.
So what issue are you talking about?
The ice caps melting.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. So we're entering the apocalypse. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe the Barnacle King starts the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, you could. You just like, you guys want some coal? I'm just giving it away.
All right. So we did the other day when we got together for our planning session, we came up with a couple monsters. Kind of what I want to talk about a little bit too.
Yeah.
So we came up with the Barnacle King's main like brutes.
Yeah.
Are like, if anyone knows what a Drider is, it's like a drow and spider mix from D&D.
And a drow is a dark elf.
A dark elf, yeah. So I came up with the idea for a Krelf, which is like a crab elf hybrid.
Yeah. Real creepy like.
So I imagine like a lobster, even though I call it a Krelf. It's like a lobster. Take a lobster, but give it like the top half of like a humanoid. but still like super armored. It has these like big meaty claws and they're running around and clomping on things.
Yeah, I like that.
And
idea.
of course, like a couple variants. So I think the goal is to like turn the world into these like mind enslaved crab monsters.
Yeah, and like going back to that Gesh-2-E, that's the
Mhm.
guy that in the Atrahasis that they use. That's the god that they use the blood from.
Yeah.
I was thinking we could almost do something like that, where the original Barnacle King, somehow his blood or juices are around still, and then this new Barnacle King uses that to make these Krelf,
Okay.
because it's got like that. Kind of reminds me of Nowhere in Guardians of the Galaxy,
Oh yeah,
when
where
they're
it's
like
the
mining the
yeah.
the dead Titan, and that's kind of what I really thought of both in the Atrahasis, and we could do something
Yeah,
similar,
we could do something like that. Yeah, that sounds good.
just using that primordial.
I was also thinking of other
essence.
variants of the Krelf,
Mhm.
because this one's a big brute, kind of like a muscle, really. So
Yeah.
maybe a smaller variant that's like more cannon fodder.
The
That's-
Mook.
The Mook, yeah. So what do you think of like a cross between a goblin and like a shrimp, or like
A Grimp.
a grimp, or not, maybe not a shrimp, but like a like a little
Like a Krill.
like a krill, yeah, krill,
Kriblin.
kriblin.
That sounds like, what is that? What are those birds from Dunland? Remember? That looks
Oh.
like a cloud. Oh, it's going against the wind, or it's moving fast and it's going against the wind. Oh, they're crubbing, or
I don't
From
remember. I don't
Dunland.
remember the
hide.
hide. Yeah, like these little like goblinoid shrimp type monsters,
I like it.
and then like maybe a smarter like spellcasty variant, which is like a squid elf or like an octopus or something.
Or a Squelf.
Squelf. That sounds so gross.
No, it doesn't.
It does. Come on, it does.
No, I like it. I'm gonna name, if I have a son, I'll name him Squelf.
I love you, Squelf.
If I have a daughter, I'll name her Squelf too.
Good old little Squelf. Little Squelf and Squelf. That sounds so gross.
The yeah, let's stop saying Squelf.
I'm totally picturing like Squidward. But yeah, so those are my ideas, and flooding the world with these kind of creepy monsters. I have made a stat block for the Krelf. So if anyone is interested, let me know. I'm working on stat blocks for the other two as well.
Yeah, we tested it out there, and yeah, it was pretty
It was pretty
powerful.
strong. I used the Drider as the base, and Greg went 1-on-1 with it with a randomly generated fighter.
Yeah, old High Torque is what we ended up naming him, the dwarf fighter.
Yeah, and he died.
I was doing really well in the beginning, and I saw you sweating a little bit because I made my guy with the high AC, right?
Yeah.
And your Krelf was missing,
Mhm.
and I was hitting, but I wasn't doing like tons of damage.
Yeah.
And then, but once it got a hold of me, whew, game over.
Yeah, because it has like a grapple and crush mechanic,
That's deadly.
and it was deadly because it turned the to hit into a you roll a saving throw.
Yeah.
Right.
And then let's talk about this Barnacle King. Maybe, like, we keep talking about the first Barnacle King
Mhm.
and then the second. Do you want to get into that?
Sure.
Because maybe it's not really making any sense to some people listening, perhaps.
Yeah. So I was thinking that the Barnacle King, not maybe like the first iteration would be this God of the Deep. It could
Yeah.
be named or nameless, right?
Yeah, like
Some unimaginable fathom from the deep. But then, to avoid getting ejected from the world, they like pour their power or whatever into a set of armor.
yeah, I like that. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like Sauron pouring his power into the One Ring, right?
Yeah. So
And at some point during the first age, some adventurer comes across this armor and dons it because it's badass armor.
yeah, it's got all the sentience, right? Like
Yeah,
sentient
and
armor.
then they're they basically merge. Right? It's like, I'm going to use this mortal body to attain godhood again and do what I want.
And then we have the three heroes
Mhm.
fight that Barnacle King.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we could have in the War of the Gods in the Dawn era, this first god of the deep, maybe fighting, right?
Yeah.
And then they switch the gods leave the mortal plane.
Mhm.
And yeah, then this guy makes this armor so he can stay. Mortal gets a hold of it, becomes immortal, and then starts doing this ceremony to godhood.
Yeah.
To try and, well, right, become a god.
Yeah.
But then the three heroes stop it somehow.
They interrupt the ritual and everyone dies and gets like into this half quasi like reincarnation cycle.
Yeah, so we didn't want to do like a stable time loop or anything.
No.
Because that is just so confusing.
No.
To write, right? But like something like kind of like that, but reincarnation instead of just
so it's fundamentally different people every time.
Yeah.
They just end up coming together. Kind of like similar to how Legend of Zelda works.
Yeah.
Where Ganon comes back and Ganon's always like the same, but then Zelda and Link are always reincarnated as Zelda and Link, but then like they don't have any memories of the past.
Yeah. See, I never really played the Zelda games because I always had like PlayStation and stuff.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know that. But it also reminds me of what was I just thinking of? Oh well, it doesn't matter. Zelda.
Was my thought anyway. Like something similar to that. But yeah, anyway, I think that's probably good, and we can move on to our weekly inspiration. So what inspired you this week, Greg?
Okay. Well, I thought of a name for a Minotaur.
Okay.
And I like the name Oxjack.
Oxjack. Okay.
And how I was inspired?
Like an auxiliary jack.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. We got our pipe tobacco because our pipes finally came in.
Yeah.
And you were getting coffee. And so I was just sitting in your car there waiting for you.
Okay.
And yeah, your display on your car said Oxjack in. I'm like, Oxjack. Oxjack. I like it.
Yeah. My auxiliary cord is like kind of messed up. So you gotta like position it in a certain way for it to work properly. And it's just a mess.
How about you?
Yeah, so I'm not really sure. I did a lot of drawing this week, and I was kind of I got a spell in D&D for my character Poncho, the turtle wizard. He got a new spell the other week, and he finally got to scribe it into a spell book, and it was Phantom Steed. And if you don't know what Phantom Steed is, basically you summon a steed, but it can be shaped and it can look like whatever the fuck you want, which is really cool.
Okay.
So you can look like whatever you want as long as it's vaguely horse sized and horse shaped.
Okay.
So basically what I went with, because Poncho is like from this like tropical type destination place, right? Like it's small village. It's basically like a Hawaiian surf town is like what I based his whole culture on. And I made up like on the spot that there's these creatures from his homeland that are like big turtle creature monsters.
Okay.
But basically, if you know what a Torterra is from Pokemon,
yep,
but like tropical.
Oh, that's
Instead
cool.
of having like the big tree on it, it has like a palm leaf. And so Poncho's new mount, Steed, Gouda, is one of these Torterras.
Gouda? I'm surprised you didn't name it Parm.
No, he's Gouda. And then his familiar's name's Cheddar. And then once I get like the Magnificent Mansion, I'll have all these servants and they're all going to be named after different cheese. It's going to be great.
Nice. I love cheese.
Yeah, so that's kind of what inspired me. I was like, oh, what do I make my steed? And I was like, I kind of want him to be like a big turtle-esque. And I was looking at different like ankylosauruses and different like dinosaurs and stuff. And I'm like, turtle. What about Torterra? So I looked at a bunch of pictures of Torterra and I was like, yes, this is it right here. This is what I want.
Nice. Now you're just riding around on a Torterra.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It goes 90 feet around.
That's not horse sized.
No, it's like real fast. It's magical, right?
Oh, I thought you meant it's 90 feet around.
No, it's movement speed.
Oh wow, that is fast.
Super fast.
Because what is the standard speed of a like a human?
Well, a human is like 30.
Yeah, so 3 times faster.
Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, that's mine. So yeah. And I think that's about all the time we have. If you guys would like to hit us up or put submissions in, you can find us on Facebook, Building Blank, a collaborative world building podcast, or on Instagram at Building Blank Podcast. And you can always send us an email, buildingblankpodcast@gmail.com. We have Discord down in the description. And yeah, hit us up. I'm on TikTok.
I'm over
Greg,
here.
he's over
I'm
here.
right here. Just talk to me anytime you like.
Yeah. So yeah, have a great week and enjoy the coming weather.
And happy birthday eve to old Travis over here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we're almost 30.
We are almost 30. All right. Thanks, guys. And